This brings us to the very interesting concept of emergent strategy. What is emergent strategy? See, as we understand it, traditional strategy is a top-down strategy, right? That's how typically strategy has been understood all the while, that a small group of people at the top of the organization evolved strategy, which is then sent downwards through the organization, and it's implemented across the company. This is the typical model. For instance, if you look at the Honda experience in the US. Now, Honda entered the US at a time when its major strength, Honda's major strength, was in small 50cc motorbikes. However, in the US market, it was the 250cc motorbikes which were popular and which were used because the US, being a large country and a country with outstanding roads by then, was a very mobile country, and they required motorbikes of higher horsepower. So, Honda came up with a traditional strategy of looking at the 250cc market, and they produced 250cc motorbikes which they introduced into the US. Now, their motorbikes unfortunately did not do well. Now, this was perhaps fortunate for Honda, because now some of Honda's frontline operators observed that there was a small market for 50cc motorbikes in the US too. This was a small growing market, the market of working women, for instance, the market of professionals in small towns. So it was a growing market. Now, what Honda did then was to focus on this 50cc market in the US, right? And it became a very big success in that market, which led on to Honda getting into the automobile, the four-wheeler market in the US. So here was a question of traditional strategy finding itself to be the inappropriate strategy. Well, let's take another instance of an Indian tire company, right? Now here I would not like to name the company, but really all Indian tire companies before perhaps 90s assumed that the Indian market was essentially a price-driven market, and therefore the strategy followed by all Indian tire companies in those days was to focus on dealer development, right? Dealers were kept happy. Tires were not branded, except for Dunlop, as long as Dunlop lasted in India, but otherwise tires were not branded. The focus of the company was dealer development, push the dealer to push the tire with the consumer. This was the tire company strategy. Now, it took a young managing director who became the managing director of one of the large tire companies in India. He was the one, when he went around the market, he realized that the market is changing, right? And the market is no longer a price-driven market. It's slowly becoming a quality-driven market. This resulted in several changes within that company, but one big change which had its ramifications across the tire industry was that tire marketing changed from being a dealer-driven exercise. It changed to being a brand-driven exercise. A brand-driven exercise. And tire brands started becoming popular in India. So here again was a case of traditional strategy proving to be inappropriate. Now, how did the company realize that the strategy was inappropriate? Because of inputs from below, right? Traditional strategy is directed from above. It is inputs from below which showed that this strategy was inappropriate. Now, let's take another example. Let's take the example of Coca-Cola. A few years back, Coca-Cola found that its product was not selling as well as it thought it should in the rural areas of UP. So they evolved a strategy of looking at dealer incentives, perhaps increasing the number of dealers, and so on. Then some of their frontline staff selling in the rural areas pointed out to the company that in the rural areas in UP, though there is electrification, actual electric power is available only at night. So during the daytime there is no power, and hence soft drinks were not available cold in most shops. On the other hand, water itself, or nimbu pani, was available in pots, and that cooled it automatically. So this was the reason why soft drinks were not picking up in that particular market. So Coca-Cola changed its strategy altogether, and over the last couple of years they have installed solar cooling facilities in rural areas in UP. They've seen an increase in sales, and now they're extending this strategy across the country. So here is the case of emergent strategy. Emergent strategy based on inputs from below. Professor Mintzberg, whom we mentioned earlier, he points out that in today's environment of change, emergent strategy is becoming more and more important.